Hello, everyone. Thank you for letting me share a little bit of your time. I do appreciate it. If you happen to be listening to the audio only portion of this, you might want to check us out on video at YouTube, Rumble, or the Tor Network. That is always helpful for the Tor Network, especially a small platform that's growing quickly. Something I've talked about before is, what you wear. This is going to be a little different than what you might think, though. Trust me. When I get to the end, you'll see what I mean, right? But I do appreciate all of you folks out there who listen regularly and who help. It means so much. Years ago, when I say years ago, when I was young, which was a long time ago, there was a popular saying, the clothes make the man. Well, the clothes make the man meant that when someone dresses themselves in what was at that time considered smartly or nicely dressed, you not only looked respectable, but you would act respectful, right? I knew somebody who worked in radio a long time ago, and this person was upset one day when the new station manager made a policy that when someone is on the air, they had to wear a tie. Okay? Even though it was on the radio, nobody was going to see them. The idea was that if you're wearing a tie, you would be more professional and offer a more professional presentation to the listeners. And what this person found was it was true. It was true that stupid tie reminded them they needed to be professional. Now, in a way, clothes, kind of make you respond in a certain way. I know myself, if I'm dressed nicely, I am more aware of not getting my nice clothes dirty. And I have a tendency to do that. I have a tendency to forget sometimes that I'm wearing, one of my better shirts or something, and I'll start to do something. I need to either be more careful or change. And also, short side note, drives me nuts when you go to a wedding and everybody's all dressed up, and at the reception they serve, like the splashiest food that gets everywhere, like the little meatballs, or they'll have chicken wings, something like that, with all the sauce all over them, gets everywhere. Drives me nuts. Anyway, back on my subject. Certain clothing is important, especially for professional people, right? Firefighters, they need to wear that protective clothing to keep them safe, right? Police wear uniforms so that they're easily identified. Soldiers wear uniforms for the same reason. Nurses, years and years ago, they would wear the little white caps. Pretty sure they have a particular name, but I didn't take time to look that up. They were easily identified. That doesn't happen now because more and more hospitals have gone to scrubs, and depending on the hospital, a lot of times they will color code. So nurses all wear a certain color. Nurses' assistants wear a different color scrub. Housekeeping wears a different color. You can identify people by what color clothes they're wearing. So to a certain degree, clothing helps us identify people. Construction workers, they might be wearing blue jeans, maybe a sweatshirt, but most of them will have those steel-toed safety boots, and they're going to be wearing a hard hat and a safety vest. That just makes sense on a construction site, right? But that's not the way I want to think about clothes today. I want to go back to Genesis and think about this. In Genesis 1:11, we read, God said, let the earth bring forth vegetation, seed-bearing plants and fruit trees, each bearing fruit with seed according to its kind, and it was so. Now, before the third day of creation, we could say the earth itself was naked, right? Many of the prophets use the metaphor that God clothed the earth. And some of them even go a little bit farther and say that he clothed it in his glory. Think about that. The earth itself, before the third day, was not covered, we could say, unclothed. Now, after Adam sinned, in Genesis chapter 3, he and his wife made clothes of fig leaves. And I don't know if you've ever handled a fig leaf to know how rough they feel, or if you've ever had the experience of reaching into a large fig bush to pick ripe figs. If you've ever had that experience, you know how rough it can be. These leaves are hard. They are, they would not make comfortable clothes. Let's just put it that way. I can say from experience, it's not often pleasant. We had large fig trees when I was growing up, fig bushes when I was growing up, and you would crawl in and through and get those ripe figs. And in the summertime, if you're wearing shorts and a t-shirt, you would itch, or at least I would. But even as angry as our Creator was with Adam for his sin, as angry as he was after all the punishment was handed out, he still had the love and compassion for his creation to dress Adam and Eve in soft skins. The lesson here is man does not always choose the best material to clothe himself. All right? Now, later we learn that mankind was given the knowledge to use like flax to weave linen, to use cotton and wool to spin thread and make clothes. Mankind's early clothes were all of natural material. It wasn't until 1938, after 11 years of research, DuPont employees announced the invention of nylon. Nylon is a combination. It's derived from coal, water, and air. Think about that. You still want to wear nylon? Doesn't sound very inviting. Later, a semi-synthetic rayon was developed, which is made from chemically modified plant fibers like cotton. But, it might be a little tougher, might be a little harder, but is it better for us? Mankind's clothing changed forever, but did it change for the better? Did it really change for the better? Since the invention of synthetic clothing, has mankind been more or less healthy? You might be saying, why does that matter? And my answer is kind of simple. Mankind has a history of clothing himself with things that are probably not the best choice. Do you know that your skin is the largest organ on your body? It's the largest organ you have. And by extension, your skin will absorb either the most beneficial nutrients or the worst toxins because of what we wear. We wear clothes all day. We sleep in some type of bedding, either sheets or blankets at night. What are they made from? What they're made from, what we wash them in, and worse than that, what remains on our clothes after we launder them, it's going to absorb into your skin, and that accumulative effect can be either positive or negative. I got curious years ago, and I looked up the ingredients in a famous fabric softener, looked at the list of chemicals, and instead of going to a material safety data sheet for that specific product, I looked at the material safety data sheets for each chemical that was in it. And it wasn't pretty. It's not pretty. Do you realize how many chemicals you're putting on your clothes? I'm just going to leave that there for a moment. The accumulative effect is what I'm thinking about. And regular listeners, I like to think when they're going to the grocery store to get something to eat, they're going to look at the label and they're going to choose food that is as close to natural as possible. Some don't think about what remains on their clothes, though. As careful as they are, And I know that people are going to be saying, well, the FDA says it's safe. Well, have you looked at the way they tested it? Think about that. Some of the testing methods are not real life. Okay, I'll just put it that way. I had a conversation this week with someone who was very, very concerned about their environment and the things that were in their environment that were harmful to their health. But as they're talking, I'm looking at what they're wearing, and they're wearing synthetic material almost continually, other than their blue jeans, which were primarily cotton, I'm sure. But think about that. This person never considered that the clothes they wear, or more importantly, how they launder their clothes, may be affecting their health. And I've suggested this little test before for listeners a few years ago when I was talking about this. And I said, try wearing natural fibers for a month. Notice if you see a difference in your overall health. And some people, they would message me and say, this is crazy. It does seem to make a difference. This time I'm going to add something to that, though. I'm going to say, be careful how you launder even your natural materials. Consider the things that stay on the material, either the clothes you wear, the bedding you sleep in. And do yourself a favor and read the label. Get back as close to natural as possible. If you do indeed see a difference, be proactive. When you go shopping for clothes, read the label. I wear quite a bit of linen, quite a bit of cotton. I do have some older polyester shirts that as they wear out, I replace. Silk is another choice. Are these things as cheap as synthetic materials? No, they're not. But if you have the capability, try wearing things that our Creator designed for us to use. Coal has a place. And I'm not sure that wearing chemically treated coal is where it belongs. Let's just put it that way. Now, that I don't advertise for any specific brands. The only thing I advertise are my books, right? AuthorJerryMitchell.com is where they are available. So there's my advertisement. I don't advertise I don't advertise for other things. I'm not telling you what brand to buy. I'm not telling you, where to buy it, what store to shop at. I'm simply saying, read the label. We are designed in the image of our Creator. And He created us to live and do things a certain way. And if we live as close to creation as possible, as close to the way we are designed to live as possible, then by extension, we will be healthier. It's a way to keep our body healthy, a way to keep our spirit healthy, and a way to keep our minds healthy as well. That is just something to think about until next time. And until next time, I do wish you many, many blessings, everyone.